So here we are with a wonderful group today who are going to watch me do a demonstration of chinagraph pencil, watercolour and soft pastels. So I've got cards there, and on those cards is my main website, and I've got two websites. One's called My Angling Grapes, one is called peterwoodarts.com. The Peterwood one is the Peterwood Arts one is my main one with all my work on, but linked to it is my YouTube site. And as I was saying, there are over 500 films with now nearly 7,000 followers over the world, so it's quite fun. And many of those films are art teaching ones, and they come into three different categories. But I'm a real artist, I'm there, and not just practicing, not in the studio all the time. Most of these are actually out there painting. So you're actually involved with me. So you get the wind on it, you'll get the birds, and you get this, that, and the other. Now, when you're painting, and this is to take the fear away from some of you, if it's a very complicated painting, you work in this way. Ghost. You work in this way. Try and remember this one. Put the right colours in the right places, in the right shapes, relevant one to another. It doesn't matter which order you do that in, as long as you have it relevant, as long as you have a whole lot. It's like a jigsaw method, if you like, my jigsaw method. The right colours, in the right shapes, in the right places, relevant one to another. Try and keep the whole painting going. Do not finish one bit of the painting first, and then try and match the whole thing to it. But if that first bit is wrong, the rest is going to be wrong. So if you balance these colours all over the painting in the right shapes, the whole thing eventually is just going to appear. One of the crits I did years ago over the river, and somebody had put a dog in at the end, and it showed because they painted the dog in a totally different way. It should have been painted the same as the rest of the painting. The mistake I made as a student, I was painting some standard roses in the garden, and the roses kept looking like these chocolate box things, you know, they glare out at you on a postcard. What am I doing? The background was beautiful, why are the roses not working? So I forgot they were roses, and I repainted them just like a jewel. I painted each facet of the petal compared to the colours around it, and the roses appeared. It isn't always the thing you think is wrong that is wrong in a painting. You can keep trying to change something, it's not that, it's something over there. Be careful about that. An example, painting a picture of Billington Harbour again, sunrise, and I wanted to go very orange in the background with the glow coming up, and I was going more and more with the cadmiums, and I thought, what's going on? Of course, we've got colour hues. Every single colour has a hue of warm and cool. We're going to be dealing with that today. But old hue is a good look. Warm and cool colours. Every single colour, yellow, lemon yellow is a cool hue, and cadmium yellow will be a warm hue. And then you've got your purples, which are a cool hue of the reds, and your cadmium red, which is a warm hue. Every single colour has a hue of cool and warm. So in that case, I had to make the colours cooler around the warms to make the warms warmer. If you're painting somebody with a fluorescent coat in your painting, you wouldn't put fluorescent paint on. If you're painting silver, you don't put silver paint on. You get the colours relevant one to another. So if I want a bright red, as Constable did, all his greens, but nearly every painting, I said this, you look, in nearly every painting there'll be a little spot of red somewhere. And that is to bring the greens out. Why? It's opposite in the colour circle to green, red, green. Your beach scenes, you want to do a dull day, you're using your burnt siennas, your raw siennas, your duller colours all close together. You want a really bright day, you put your yellow sand in and your purple shadows, opposite in the colour circle, wow, pow. The next thing, of course, then is tone. Colour hue is quite different to tone. Tone is light and dark. And if we photograph a palette of paint such as that, you would find that many of these colours that look bright from there, a bit messy now, many of these colours would look much the same in grey. So that colour, actually, tonally, probably wouldn't be far off that one. Tonally, and if you want to see tone, the best way is to squint down slightly, and you'll see the tone is more later than some pastel papers. But having said that, here we go again. This was done on fine air in Egypt. And that again is water and pastel. That box, a jar of water, one brush, and I'm away. Another thing is that when you've got these big heavy pastels and you can't make them very thin, you can take a brush, a thin brush, pick up the pastel, and you can draw with it. So you can put your thin lines and details back in with a brush and water and pastel, as you would with watercolour. And it still ends up being a pastel. Yeah? Tons of things to try. That's why I'm asking you to be open-minded today and just consider experimenting, exploring. Now, I've got some adventures, and there's no adventure in life without risk, is there? Otherwise it wouldn't be there. Yeah? You're here today, risking. You're here today, a piece of paper, somebody might laugh at you next to you, hopefully they won't, but you know, that's what you risk. And I do the same standing here, you know, somebody pick me up on something and say, oh, that's not right, or I don't like that. But we're going to have to take risks to move forward. And all we're going to lose is a piece of paper, or you can work over it. With this way of working, you can't really go wrong because you can keep working over it. If you make the pencil marks wrong this morning, don't worry, you can go over a pastel afterwards. So let's relax straight away, shall we? The way I'm teaching you to work is very relaxed. You can make ends meet at the end. This way of working pastel over watercolour as well means if you have watercolours that have failed in the past and are too tight or overworked, and you don't want to wash them away completely, you can work over with pastel like this way of working. If you go loose and go gradually tighter, you stop when you want. You're the one that's in control. You can go as detailed as you want, or you can just stop there. So I'm going to use both of them. You see how loosely I've gone here now? I have to hold the board a bit if I want it to be a bit harder. So, for instance, I'm going to use the sharp edge of the crayon here, the pencil. It comes down to there, just above here. That's my halfway, quarter, just about there. I'm just going to mark it. Now I can do it grey by just using it lightly, or if I want to come, let's say quarters there, if I want to come harder, I've got to push harder. Quite loosely, but very dark where it's very dark, and then if you want lighter areas, very light. Okay? And I want you to put all the darks into your painting, whether you're in one or two. Put all the darks in. Don't worry about all these areas. Don't start painting the dark colours like that. Don't start drawing them in. Just the ones that are black. Alright? Because the watercolour is transparent and it will let this show through, although it will tint it. So where you want a darker line, let's see this one here. And also when you're doing drawing, the rule of thumb is that the mark is about the object you're doing. So here's a very broken edge. If you don't do this, your drawing will be flat. So there's a very broken edge. I'm going to make very broken marks there. And I'm going to start shading in broken ways. That dark area. I'm going to make it a bit darker, cross-hatching. And then go darker still into it. I'm going to break my lead, I'm pushing down quite a bit. You can see the difference in dark and light there, yeah? So if you're doing a drawing of somebody, an outline drawing, never do a tram line around something. There are times, I say never, there's always an exception to the rule. Manet, for instance, beautiful line drawing and so on. But normally, make the outline or the edge about the object. So if it's a broken edge, you make a broken object. If it's the top of a glass and then it goes dark and light, you make dark and light. No amount of shading in a drawing that's a tram line will make it look real, will make it a three-dimensional. You have to have the edges which are about the objects that you're drawing. You can the other way around, because if you're very clever, is you don't really line at all, you just shade. And then the edges will appear. That's very hard to do. It's a good exercise to do. Edges, yes, must be about. So if I'm making marks about branches here, then I'm going to make I'm making them about the branch. I'm not trying to copy the actual branch. So I'm just tickling, twisting the pencil off here, just letting it come up, and where it's harder, I make it darker. Where it's lighter, I go a bit lighter. Where it's wider, I go a bit wider. Trees, remember, are like atomic explosions. They grow from thick to thin. The acorn comes down like a bomb, hits the ground, it grows up, it explodes up, it comes out in the branches, the leaves form, they eventually drop off and come down like clouds of an atomic explosion. And the roots are the upside down tree. So I could have done this with water and pastel, just built it straight up, and not bothered with the pencil at all, because the water and pastel would be more opaque. Lots and lots and lots of crisscrosses, scribble, scribble, scribble. Make the marks about the marks you've got here. I'm trying to go from thick to thin. As I push, I'm going heavy and then lighter. Okay, quick as that. I want to move on. Now I do prefer my Croat oval notch, I must admit. This one is a Graduate Dale Roundley. It's a little bit stiff what I want, but it should work. Now normally, and I haven't done this today yet, I would wet all my paints first. I use tube paints normally, although I have got those Russian ones, which means that I can top them up when I want, and you just got to go ahead and just soften them first, otherwise you're scrubbing away with your brush and you ruin your brushes. Always tickle with your brushes. Anytime you scrub is when we're doing dry brush work. Or scumbling. It's a lovely word. Some of the students love that word, scumbling, you know, when you're putting dry paint over the top and just scumbling on the surface. We're working wet into wet in this. Let me pick it again. I'm going to start with the cool one. Now, we've got warm and cool blues. I'm going to start with my cooler blues, and there are several colours that you just simply cannot mix in any paint. In watercolour, especially, for instance, cobalt violet, there's no way you can mix it. You can get something similar with rose, but my blues working from cools through turquoise, that was the one I was trying to, couldn't find the word for. Turquoise is one you can't really mix. It's a lovely colour, and it's a cool, so it's on the cool end. When I say cool, I mean as in ice and I mean as in fire. So warm would be fire, red, cool would be ice. And I'm going to I could have wetted the paper and gone straight wet into wet. I'm not going to leave very much white at all because I'm going to put my whites back in again, deliberately. When you're using watercolour and pastel, use the colour far more thickly than you normally use. Remember that watercolour dries about a quarter lighter anyway. But if you want that pastel to show, you've got to paint your paint on fairly thickly. So I'm quite gently, but I'm going to rapidly work into this in a moment. I'm just working out where my cools are in the background here. Cerulean. Up here. And paint wet next to wet. I don't want hard edges particularly, but I can have hard edges later. Just get some water going on the paper now. So I don't want to leave any white paper on this, so I'm going to go right into this and lose it all. I'm tempted to because I'm so used to working on watercolour and leaving the lights behind as well, so I was so tempted then to start leaving the lights, but I won't do. I want to deliberately come into here. And I'm using my cooler colours first because the warmer colours tend to be stronger. Right. I'm going to go a little warmer now, and I was talking about the cobalt violet, which is a beautiful colour, look. It's a lovely pink. Just wet into wet, just giving the background colours right across the pencil marks. Start using. This is why I like the filberts. This is why I like these wash brushes, because I can use them thinly this way. And already it's starting to get the feeling snow. And I see colour, so I'm really going to pull colour out. Quite a few artists seem to think that colour is just black and white, or snow is black and white. It's not, it's full of colour. Let's really start to build this up. All the way down to here. I'm going to go quite dark as I go on. So just a few minutes and I'll have this bit done, and we'll carry on afterwards. After you've had some tea and some refreshment. As I say, any time you've got questions, you can ask them. I can carry on painting as I'm nattering. I'm going to go stronger yet. I mean, I could paint this in this technique without using the pastel at all. You can imagine if I left the lights behind. It's just, I'm letting the paper, it's tiny. I can teach anybody to work with oils or acrylics, or I can just teach you by numbers. But watercolour, as many of you will know, the experts here, the watercolour is something that you have to have a feel for. And I have to loosen up too. But often I have to come back into 2 or 3 paintings so I can get into watercolour. You have to know how long it's going to take before it dries. You have to know how much pigment is actually on your brush. I'm going thicker and thicker with my pigment at the moment. I'm putting on much stronger pigments as I go on into here. I'm just gradually bringing up these lights and darks. Diffuser, when I'm working with acrylic inks, a diffuser is vital, because if acrylic ink's dry, you've had it. With watercolour now I can come back, look, and I can come back to my edges and I can soften them easily. I can put wet on and I can soften them that way, bring them back. I'm not worried about losing these lights because I'm going to bring those lights out with pastel later. It's just to give you an idea. I'm using it either as a flat or as an edge, and I'm using it very delicately and tickling across. And it's very rapid, as you can see. I'm working wet next to wet, wet into wet, wet on dry. And the technique, all very rapidly. Again, darker still. Let's take a bit of Prussian blue. Put some of these darks in. They almost go black, look. So I could use a fine brush now and I could start painting some more of these twigs in, branches in, or I can just come in with these darks going over the blacks that I've got, making them a bit darker here and there. So it's Prussian blue, almost, not neat, but it's well on the way to it. Prussian blue, just, again, my brush is tickling broken marks on. My brush is about those trees. It's not copying those trees. So we've got the blacks now start to look almost grey, they're disappearing back because I'm using so much stronger colour. Now just a few of these darks coming down into here. And it's quite an interesting little painting already, isn't it? Yeah. So let that dry off and I'll do the other one after tea and then we'll put the pastel on and then you have some fun. Is that alright for now? Okay, I'm going to go on to the warmer one and I'm going to put in some warm colour straight away. So it's wet into wet this time. Last time I painted wet on dry and wet against wet and gradually got wet into wet. This time I'm going to paint entirely wet into wet. You don't want to flood it, just have it coated. Otherwise you will get those cauliflowers. Cauliflowers tend to happen when you get one area wetter than another. That's lemon yellow and it looks fairly transparent. Get a little bit thicker. Now the Aureolin yellow, I can get it clean enough, is much more delicate. You probably really can't see that, it looks very similar there, but that is actually more transparent than this one. Right, I need to lift those away a bit, just bring those up into there. So those, both of them are cool yellows. I'll take some of that Aureolin yellow and it's the same with yellow ochre and raw sienna. Raw sienna is much nicer than yellow ochre in watercolour because it's transparent. So I would choose raw sienna over yellow ochre any time. Cool around here. Put some light in there later. Now, so I'm leaving that. I'm not putting that white sun in there at the moment. I'm going to put that back in with pastel. I would normally, but bring that light colour coming down. Now let's take a warmer yellow. In this case I'm going to take a little bit of cadmium. It's only slightly warmer. Cadmium orange I think into that now as well. Bring that round. Cadmium orange is a fairly opaque colour, but I want a fairly warm glow coming down to here. But it's a bit too thick. Like I say, don't be afraid to go too thick with your paint. They will dry lighter anyway. While this is still fairly wet, I want to drop other colours into it. So warm and cool yellows there straight away. Now that lovely colour we used earlier, the cobalt violet. I'm not saying that if you haven't got these colours in your palette, don't worry, we're going to manage with other colours today, but it's really just to give you an idea. The cobalt violet is transparent, but it's a little bit powdery. And again, depending on what paper you've got, if I was using a rough paper for this, we get that granulation with the ultramarine especially. Now I'm using paint very, very heavily now, very, very dark. And that's the difference between using the paint more transparently, or you see how it just creeps down here, just tickling it so it just creeps. I'm not worried if it goes too far, don't worry about it.
What colour is that one you use?
This is violet. If it goes too far or dribbles down, you can pick it off, but don't worry because you're going to go across this later with the pastels. Now I did little dots and dashes there with the pencil. I'm going to do the same with the brush, look, twisting my brush, turning it side to side, feeling those leaves. Same as I'd use if I was painting a summer scene or autumn scene and I was doing these leaves. I can flick in the twigs and the branches, I can put in the leaves texturally. Prussian blue now. And I haven't actually used my cools yet. I haven't really gone into the blues, which I'm going to do. One of the reasons I haven't is because I'm going to show you much more of that with the pastels on this particular one. Let's just get this going. Right, let's go to some of those blues. I'm going to go down to the, straight down to the cobalt blue this time. I don't want to go the intermediate one. And just really drop in some pure colour into here. You see how that cool makes the others much warmer straight away. I want to go darker in that area too yet. Don't be afraid of it. Be brave today, try new things. Then blame me afterwards. Well, he said to do that. His fault. Darks here, look, painting the paint much thicker, pigment much more heavily. Bit of the purple and the ultramarine together. Bring these trees up with the tip of my brush. Move down through here, stronger. The pastels, so that we're in time for, if I can get these pastels done in time for 12, we'll be 20 minutes, yeah? Be lunch, then we'll be able to go on this afternoon, might go over, sorry, bit more warmth coming in here, look, warm against the cool. If I put these warms in, it makes the cool seem cooler. Really look for the colours. You have to look for the colours and exaggerate them slightly with things like this. Right, we'll let that dry off. Make sure I've got enough colour in there, I think I have. Any other blues that I want, I can put in with the pastels afterwards. So, let's go on now to the pastels. These are unisons. The SAA pastels are also very good. The SAA pastels don't look as big as these, but they are actually slightly larger and just as soft. So they weigh slightly more. So actually, the SAA pastels are giving you more for the money. I'm not saying that because they help sponsor me, but because they used to, Unisons used to as well. The Unisons possibly are slightly softer, slightly creamier, are slightly higher in quality, and they have more darks. They have slightly higher colour range. I persuaded the SAA to do some dark colours. I think they brought them out. Now they sent me some test ones, and I had a letter a while ago saying that they, but before I went away, saying they now had a dark range out. You do need those dark colours. You cannot do the pastels without that. Very deep blue, very deep purple, very deep green. I don't use a black, I use a very, almost a dark brown purple. But you do need those darks as well as the lights. So that has to be drying off. Now let's come back into this, and we'll start doing some of these highlights. Are you ready? This is the fun bit. This is where you really enjoy it. Look how we can just go straight in with the pastel.
What colour are you using?
I'm using a cream at the moment. Very light cream. But I'll just, as I go along, I'll do it now. Put the light in where you see it. Dots and dashes, highlights. Can you see all right behind me? This is something you do need to see now. So if you need to move for a minute, do. I want you to see this. How we can put the light back in. I think like Monet, like the Impressionists, the beauty of painting is you're painting with light. I'm not painting with colour, I'm painting with light. This now becomes liquid light in my hand. And I'm going to flood this light through the picture here. I'm going to flood it through here. And it might be that, it might be a very light pink, it's what we've got there. I can use my finger to blend. I could still, at any time I want, and this is what I was saying about the versatility of this, I could still come back in. If I didn't want to use this watercolour, I can now use the pastel and blend it with the brush look. See the lines I can make with the pastel? Just like paint. So I can cover surfaces and I can use a brush. I can use a fine brush if I wanted to.
And a wet brush?
Yes. It won't matter. Now there's the texturing. You see, I've got a bit of paper. You see how I'm doing that texturing? That's what we call stumbling. That's dragging the pastel over, which is why I don't want the bits of paper on it. That's dragging the pastel over to give me a slightly rough texture. When you put pastel on, it's fresh. When you blend the pastel, or use water with it, it deadens it. So the old English technique of blocking and blending is to block in the whole picture and blend it, and it's dead. And then you work your succeeding coats afterwards, and you don't touch them. Don't touch the pastel at the end at all, leave it alone, that's why you don't spray it. So these coats I can put on, and I can play around with them. You get the idea? It works, doesn't it? And again, you can keep building up and up and up. I can come into here with more and more darks if I want to, with some water. And that will play against that deep. I just about to dip it in my drinking water. I've done it in the whiskey at home before. But that will play against this deep blue here. If we make a mistake, all we've got to do is go over it again. So if I make a mistake, say that's too thick now, I can just go over it with the pastel and break in again. You can't really, as I say, you can't really go that far wrong. And you can use this technique, and I've used it on landscapes with acrylic inks and built up really strong backgrounds with acrylic inks and then work the pastels over the top. But two totally different colour schemes.
Yeah.
That pink comes down through here. Now, if I want that to look pinker, do I keep going pinker and pinker, or shall I actually take a very, very light blue and let's just scumble a little bit of light blue into there, and that will bring back, because it's the opposite, it brings back, you see, the pinks. So don't just think you've got to plaster more of one thing on. Light against dark, warm against cool, rough against smooth. Loose, and I can gradually tighten up until I'm happy with it. I think that's shown you enough, really, hasn't it? You can see. I can teach you the same with painting as well. You know, we start loose, we finish tight. So let's have some lunch, shall we? That's all right, I've got my sandwiches and I hope my tummy is okay for them.
Would you like some coffee or tea?
That's good, yeah. It's looking nice over there too. That's much better, yes, that will work. Really black now, come on, push hard, get the black. That's nicer, better composition, yeah. That's lovely, that, yes, yes. There's nice things happening in there.
So that I get down.
So that's ready for pastel now, yeah. Now you're getting those darks, that's beautiful. How are you doing over here? Getting the warms in, that's fine, yes, I like it very much, yeah. How are we doing? Alright, on with your pastel.
I'm not happy with that, but I was going to think about it.
It's fine. Oh, absolutely. We won't see more like this smashing now. That really is. Yeah, both of yours. 80% students are better than me. Absolutely lovely, yeah. You see the difference from back here? See these? If you get these mounted up and have an exhibition of them, that'd be absolutely lovely. Yep. So you're pleased with that, aren't you now? So successfully. So here we are with 23 in the line from the club, and they've done brilliantly well. But I reckon, personally, I think you've done extraordinarily well under pressure, and I hope you've had a good time. No pressure at all, no. Would I do that to you? And hopefully some of you I'll see again. Very kindly asked me to do a crit, as they would say, of the work. I don't do that, I do positive assessments. especially as it's the work that under me. I don't say anything nasty about it. First of all, right, no, as I just said to you earlier on, you didn't get on camera, but you've done extremely well. You've turned out some extraordinary individual pieces of work, and they haven't been just copying the photograph. In some ways, they're not copying the photograph at all. But no, the point is that you've done totally different things with that photograph and turned them into works of art, all of you. And you've all learnt a new technique, and some of you have succeeded more with it than others because it's totally new to you, and many of you are watercolour artists. This is totally alien to watercolour, except for the background medium. You've learnt about working in the reverse. Instead of painting the lights first, leaving the lights first and going to the darks, we've done the darks first and gone to the reverse, which is an acrylic or oil technique. So it's a step in between, isn't it? Very fluid technique, and I think some of you will take this further later with your soft pastels. It won't work with those hard pastels, but some of you might take this further later using the soft pastels and water on their own. Never mind the chinagraph pencil, just being loose and using them as a watercolour and building up. So if I'll just go through them fairly quickly, I've seen most of you really busy anyway because I've talked you through the works. And one of the things was, in giving praise, is that you gain confidence, which I hope you have today, in order to try more. I said, I can't praise you enough. You've worked really hard today and you've all done well. Some of you, always when you're closer to your work, feel negative about it. Hopefully now you've got away from it and see it compared to the others, you realise you've done well. There's nobody hasn't done well today. Nobody. So, this one first of all then, I mentioned it earlier on. Why I like this one in particular is because it's gone away from the photograph into being a more contemporary piece of work. It's almost gone into the abstract. Very aware of the composition, the way that these forms have been brought out, one shape against another. Almost cubist in a way, isn't it? I like the gestural strokes, so the composition, gestural strokes, and the boldness of colour and tone as well. Very strong lights and darks. I know that this artist will take this further. I'm certain she'll now work on this and do. I would like to see more texturing going later. If I was going to see you take this further and do another landscape, you probably want to do more with the branches, you do more with the leaves and twigs. If you do another landscape like this, you'll go much more into the difference between roughs and smooths and cools and warms. So this was just a first stepping stone, but water, I want the stepping stone for a big start, you know. So that one, this fella down here, whose is this? Again, we look at the two together and how different from similar photographs. How different can you get? Beautiful twisting, curling, snake-like fronds of the branches. We've got that feeling of the forest with the light coming through. If I go to go a stage further, we've got the lovely colours. We've got the hues of the cool blues and the warm blues and the pinks coming in. If we're going to go a bit further, I would like to have seen a bit more colour in the lights. That may be partly the fact of the patterns you had, and you needed more colours in the lights. You hadn't got the creams, you hadn't got the... Yeah. If I was taking this a bit further, another hour or so, that's really good. At last, somebody with a smart signature. Who's this?
Mine.
Right.
But you tortured me into doing it.
Now you say thank you. Because it's got a lovely light. But again, if you look at the difference in the two, the softness of light there, I mean, you can tell it's a male and female painting being set, isn't it? I mean, you know, the strength and boldness of that, and then the softness and the gentility of that in the light. You've got the light. It's all right. Yeah. It's a start. I do hope that you explore more with it on your own. That's the point, isn't it? You've seen it could work for you. That's a simple little piece, but doesn't it work?
Yeah.
I mean, it's so, it just catches those highlights. This is what I was saying. When I first saw it, it was just scumble. I said, no, come back in with a few of the bright highlights. And it's just brought it out. It's the minimum. When you're doing a bad drawing, it's sometimes called a sketch. Why is a bad drawing called a sketch? You know, you can do a good drawing with 2 or 3 lines. No amount of wrong lines. Giacometti gets away with it. Okay, just, you know, wires and wires and wires. But it's better to say the most with a few lines than nothing with loads of lines. Well, you have left the photographs behind. You take them. Sorry? You leave the photographs behind. You can have a copy if you want. I say it would be nice for you to finish on your own. I would like to feel you wanted to finish. You will finish. You can tell I was a teacher, can't you? No, it would be nice to think that you want to. You know what you're doing there. You can see that you could use them.
I know that if I use water with them, they're not messy.
Right, so you might try pastels a bit more now anyway, that's the point. You can see other ways of doing it, but they're lovely. And again, the two next, the lovely golden light, I mean the feeling of morning, we know that's morning sunlight, we know that's already late evening, but it's morning. Coming through there, it's all right, isn't it? You can manage, yes, trees are good for you. And the next one, well, what can we say? I mean,
Fantastic, huh?
it really works, doesn't it? Yeah. Perhaps, if I was going to be pernickety, I might find one or two different cools, a bit of turquoise in here and there, to come between. It's all fairly warm when I went around judging their exhibition, and I'm afraid that you want to save money, but it's no good using photo frames or second-hand frames half the time. You know, you won't sell the paintings, people don't want to buy them cheap, unless they're really. You do need to put decent frames and mounts on your work. It makes a difference. It's a lot of time. You're just getting into it.
Yeah.
So now you know what to do, you'll be fine. Work on them. Work on them. What can I say? Because you're only partway through those, so it's not fair to say any more.
No.
You're doing
Thank you
well.
very much, yeah.
You've got the feeling. Well done, everybody.
Thank you very much.